call, so I'm going to be rolling solo here. If you guys have questions, never hesitate to obviously throw it in the chat and hit me up, and I'll answer anything I can or know or find some resources to do so. So let me do a share. So what I'm going to do, you guys see that okay? Just give me a thumbs up. You can see it. Good. Okay. I'm just going to keep it like this. Just one second here. I get back to the top. So I don't get locked out. I still have fixed my Zoom where I can see everything. So if somebody wants to ping in, I can't see them. So I'm going to keep it here. So what we're going to again address is we're going to talk, obviously some nutritional components, but then hunger hormones, appetite management, because this is one of those things that people can be impacted at a different level depending on there's a lot of factors that can come into play with this. And I'll just kind of elaborate a little bit more on what is true hunger, what should you feel, how can you maneuver those responses and still be okay with it, and then give you some strategies and techniques that you can implement if you're struggling with these with some of the responses and things I talk about. So obviously, hunger is a normal response. We're supposed to have it. It's a cue. It's a chemical response, a hormonal response for us to seek out food. So it's a natural signal the body needs energy. So our energy source is going to be impacted or low. And there's going to be two types of hunger that I will address and kind of talk through, and that's going to be physical hunger. This is where you may feel your stomach growling. You may have low energy and irritability. I've been there specifically if I'm in a pretty low calorie or some type of cut. I always would tell Aaron, I always had to watch myself around the kids because what happens is you become really irritable and you may snap or they may get on your nerves a little bit quicker. So, you really got to hold your emotional response when you're doing something like that. And then there's the emotional hunger, and this could be triggered by stress. I see this happen with boredom and or specific cravings. So physical hunger is okay, and we should be able to manage that. And I will be pretty transparent. It's okay if we're in a lower calorie run. We're trying to get some body fat off of us. If you do have stomach growling, that's not a problem. That should be a natural response. I do quite often, specifically again when I'm trying to stay in a lower percentage body fat or trying to get to a lower percentage body fat. I will have those cues and things pop up. That is okay. That's a natural component, and nothing's wrong. We're not. Trust me, we can go a couple days without eating and be okay. Our body has enough fuel. But you got to figure out how you respond to those cues because each person's going to respond differently. Now, obviously, if you have a low energy or irritability, there's two things we can do with that. Is one, you may just push your calories up slightly. You may consume more water because sometimes, I mentioned this last call as well. It may be some dehydration, or if you're really flat on energy, you can add a good carb source like fruit or something like that to push you up. Now, when we jump over to emotional hunger, this is where some people struggle with this area more than others, and that's okay. I want to address that because if we are triggered by stress, then we got to figure out how we can cope with stress in a better format. How do we replace the response to go towards food? And I'll hit on a couple different things later in the presentation. And then the other things to be very, very aware of, this happens to people is boredom, or they've been in a routine of where they consume calories and a good amount of calories without even being present or aware. They're there, but not 100%. And then the craving component can be triggered by specific foods you're consuming. If you're There's a lot of processed foods and a lot of foods that have added sugars and fats and other chemicals that are and will cause some disruption with your insulin, and they have other addictive properties. So that could happen as well. So as we get into this, these are going to be the hormones that impact the hunger response. So ghrelin is the main hunger hormone. It's secreted mainly in the stomach, and then it rises before a meal and it fall after eating. That's where sometimes we have to be careful, and I have some strategies later in this presentation is slowing down the process of consumption in the moment. I'm not very good at it. I had two older brothers, and if I didn't eat, the food was gone. So I still struggle with that component, but you have to try to be aware of how fast you do eat. So there's some strategies behind that because it can impact the response of the hunger hormone and allow the ghrelin to kick in so that way you feel satisfied instead of continuing to consume and overeat if you eat too fast. So this can increase with poor sleep and stress. Again, these things are going to pop up quite a bit, and I just commented on it earlier. This is why our foundational program addresses some of these components. It all fits together as like a puzzle because sleep and stress can impact your overall health, how you respond to food, your insulin, on down the road. Okay. Some strategies on how you guys can work through some of these hunger hormones. You'll see this reiterated a couple different times. Again, sleep. So if we can get your sleep dialed in, it's going to really impact your ghrelin, show your hunger response. Again, ranges are going to be 7 to 9 hours. Tracking that component is important in getting those data points to see how you can make that better. The other thing you can do is meal timing, eating kind of on a cyclical or regular basis for yourself. More predictable, not skipping meals, because what will happen is it can spike it and make it even higher. So then what happens to you is you too typically will overconsume or overeat. So this is just ways to help keep your ghrelin or hunger response from triggering up high. Again, you're going to see high protein in here is going to help again tap that down a little bit so you don't have that hunger response as fast. And then managing stress. So stress can amplify ghrelin and emotional hunger. So that response. So again, you may see these repeated because these are some of the foundational core components we try to address in our programs, both programs, all programs, I should say, in whatever format you're working with us. So leptin is the hormone that's going to pull down the response. So if I can get this right, I'm going to miss this. Satiety response. So what that is it pulls down your hunger response or gives you the sense of being full or satisfied. So it allows you, or it will pull down so you're not going to go crave or go eat more. So it's the signal to shut everything down. So you have one that turns on and one to shut down. So it will obviously signal fullness and energy sufficient. Like, hey, I got enough fuel. I'm not in, dire need for an energy source. I have enough. And this can be impacted with excess weight and poor diet. So I will address and hit on a couple of different components a little bit deeper in here. So the sensitivity of leptin is we got to really try to minimize or reduce the amount of processed food somebody is consuming with added sugars, because that can have a good amount of impact on your leptin response. So if your leptin's not triggered, then you can consistently consume more and more and more, then our calories are too high. And it can have some other impacts on the insulin as well. So some things that you want to look at is avoid constant grazing. So, we try to teach you guys structured meals. Now, it depends on the individual. Some of you guys and gals may have snacks. Some of you guys may not. There's different ways to coach that. And It depends on the person and where they're at with their nutritional guidance. So the other things that we that will help this is strength training. Any type of resistance training is going to help improve this response, and it helps with your body's response to leptin, which is always good. So the interesting part, and these are just some more science components, body fat and leptin. So more body fat means more leptin because that's a response to signal, hey, I need more energy source. I need more food. So we've seen this, and I would have to do a little bit more research to see how they identify this specific response in individuals. So there is some science around this, which is leptin resistance. Again, I would have to do a little bit more research. I couldn't talk off the cuff in detail of how they identify this. But this is why some people can feel hunger even with, high fat stores. What I'm saying there is even that they're satisfied and they've consumed X amount, their body is still responding in a way that the body thinks that they haven't consumed enough. And that could be very, very tricky. Again, I don't have enough. I would have to do a little bit more research on how to identify that. Now, my some of my scientific assumptions with this is with the higher percentage of body fat, it messes up the hormonal response. So anytime we carry excess amounts of adipose tissue, it can start disrupting the hormonal balance. And this is one of the hormones that it can impact. Obviously, percentage of body fat can impact multiple hormones. And then I know some of you guys and some of the individuals in our programs are on the GLP-1s. Those those types of peptides and drugs are very good at shutting these pathways down. So what I'm saying there is the hunger response is tamped down. So it will impact your leptin and ghrelin. I meant to touch on that, because I know some of the individuals in our program are utilizing these as a tool. It's a great tool. We just have to figure out how to utilize that tool for the best advantage. So it 100% will affect your leptin and ghrelin response being on a GLP-1. And that's a good thing because if I would go back and talk about the hunger response and you're on a GLP-1, you want to have a little bit of hunger response utilizing that tool, because twofold, and this is in general too, if you have a little bit of hunger sensation, your stomach's growling a little bit, that's probably good, really good signs of saying, hey, I'm starting to pull back how many calories I'm consuming. My body's telling me I need to eat. But what you're doing is, which is not a bad thing. What you're doing is you're training your body to consume a little bit less calories than you're accustomed to. You're in a homeostasis. Well, if you're in a surplus homeostasis, you're going to start putting on body fat. If you're break even, you'll stay right where you're at. What we want to do is be in a slight deficit where you're going to have hunger responses. What also happens, what we see, and from a scientific standpoint, if we start consuming less, our stomach will, and you've heard this, our stomach will start to pull in tighter or shrink up a little bit. So it will take less food to feel the impact of being satisfied or full. So that's another benefit that, in general, not on a GLP-1, but if you're on one, that's another benefit. Because if we can get you, past that hunger response a little bit and not consuming too much, your stomach will shrink, and it becomes easier to consume less. So it becomes a win-win, and we see this in that process. And I myself, and people are different in this format. I've never been a big eater. I just don't like that sensation of being overfull, and it's just one of those things that's kind of been a response that I've always had. I don't do well if I overconsume. It makes me feel sick, which is a good thing for me. But how it impacted me through my career and specifically athletics and things of that nature, I had a really hard time putting muscle mass on for the longest time because I wouldn't consume enough calories. So it's just, it depends on person to person. But what that was I never did allow my stomach to obviously expand out because I didn't like that response. And some people are more accustomed to that, and we have to get that into that um, area where you start getting into a caloric restriction. You're not eating or consuming enough. Your stomach starts to shrink. All those things are going to be beneficial for you because then you can control the amount of consumption. So that way you're not overeating. And then insulin is going to be, one of those hormones that's impacted with the nutritional component and manipulating what we're consuming and how often and things of that nature can really help stabilize your insulin response. Again, the GLP-1s help with this as well. Um, Regulate blood sugar levels. Uh, Obviously, we don't want large spikes and then crash. We see that a lot if you're consuming more. Um, I say more processed, more simple carbs, you're going to see a spike, an energy boost, crash, cravings. Because the reason you get cravings is when your insulin drops back off, you're chasing energy again. And because you didn't stabilize your insulin, what you did is you spiked it up and it crashed. Now you need to pull it back up again, and you're going to eat again. Because typically the types of foods that do that are not going to be satisfying and fulfilling. So then we overconsume in calories. So what we want to look at is more balanced meals to prevent that roller coaster up and down. We want a stable baseline insulin response. And you're going to see here, you're going to see some of this stuff repeated again. One thing you can do to focus on, and this is for females too, is fiber is very, very good with that. So if you're thinking of, hey, I struggle with getting all my protein in, if you can sneak a good fibrous veggie in with a meal, that's going to be a win-win because it's going to help stabilize your insulin, slow down the digestion, so it's going to stay with you longer. And typically, the nutrient value of fibrous foods are higher. Not all, but some. More, I would just say right off, like a broccoli would be, fantastic for that. Then also, what you can do to help with the response of not only insulin but hunger responses is healthy fats. Healthy fats are always overlooked a lot of times, like avocado, but you got to watch because again, they're calorie dense, so it's going to have a lot of calories and not necessarily give you a great sensation of being full, but it does help. So good fats, but you just got to watch some from a calorie standpoint. It could really push your calories fairly quickly. So you want to really the refined carbs like white breads, pastas, obviously sodas. They're all going to spike and crash. I see this a lot over the years with coaching clients. Is we got to really focus on not having those dips and valleys. And if we can get it stable, your energy level is going to be stable. That means your consumption of protein, fiber, fat, and carb are more in alignment with stabilizing your insulin. So your energy levels will be better throughout the day. Another thing you can do to incorporate this, and this is a good tool,
Thank you.
if you have time, is movement after meals. So after you consume some food, evening, at lunch, if you have time, just go out and do a short walk. It's going to help with your insulin sensitivity and response, and it's going to help regulate your hunger. So that's just a small trick. Again, some of um, these techniques, you start to master each one or get close enough, get up to 80%, and you start putting them all together, putting all the pieces together. It's really going to help with your hunger response. It's going to help with your insulin response, and it's going to allow you to be able to, drop your percentage of body fat a lot more efficiently. This next one we hear a lot about is cortisol, obviously stress hormone. It's not necessarily always bad, but high levels consistently, yes, it can be a problem. And we see this a lot. We're overstimulated, we're under rested. That's where, and then stress comes along because we can create a lot of the stress from a mental standpoint, not a physical standpoint, but your body doesn't know the difference. So stress hormones, they will increase your appetite, can drive cravings, sugar, fat, fatty foods. It's going to be more about stress management, which again, some of this is repeating. How do you respond to stressful situations? Because each
Yeah.
person, it's going to be different. What is stress to you? All right. How you respond? How can we reframe Are we really in danger? Are we creating the stress just because we're thinking in a negative format? Sometimes we just think in a negative format, and that negative format's causing stress. So it's just really understanding your lens and how we can adjust your view of the world to really create more of how you respond to stress.
1,200 feet, join the highway.
And then cortisol stress hormone is the main stress management tools is understanding how to really address your central nervous system, your fight or flight response. And breathing is the quickest and fastest way to do that. And specifically, there's a lot of breathing techniques, but there's also simple ones that you can do, or that you hear about diaphragmatic breathing. Well, diaphragmatic breathing is what it is you're using your diaphragm properly to breathe. And when you stimulate your diaphragm properly, it actually pulls you back into parasympathetic rest relaxation. There's different techniques to stimulate your diaphragm properly. There's box breathing. There's obviously they call it diaphragmatic breathing or deep breathing, belly breathing. So you're going to hear a lot of different versions of that. Um, Other ways to manage stress is meditation, journaling, prayer, walks, obviously walks in nature. If you want to get really off the beaten path, you go barefoot, right? There is a thing called grounding. It does work. There's a magnetic response. You see me walking around my house outside, and my neighbor's always like, "How come you don't have shoes on?" I'm like, "Well, I don't really care for shoes, and it's a win-win if I can get out and do some grounding myself." So, even in the winter, you'll see me walking around in the snow. But I just got to watch it. I do have uh, medical condition with circulation, so I got to watch that component, especially when I get my cold plunge. Um, so steady meals. You don't want long gaps. Now there is some things if you guys want to go into like the fasting component. Is there some good benefits of fasting? Depends. Yes, there can be. I think it's probably easier for a male to do fasting because a female can do it, but you just got to watch on the distance or the amount of time because the hormonal response of a female is going to be a little bit more drastic in comparison if in comparison to a male, specifically with fasting. So there's some windows. If you have more questions on that, never hesitate. But um, obviously exercise can be a main component to help regulate, so physical activity reduces baseline cortisol levels. Cool part about that is, and you can also, and I don't have it in here, I should have put it in here. You can also use saunas. Sauna is a good tool as well because it pulls down your cortisol response. It affects your heat shock protein, the same thing that is affected from exercise. And what it will do, it pulls down your overall level of your natural cortisol. So you have less inflammatory response. So that's just some of the health components that we can implement to help manage cortisol responses. Oop, sorry, got myself off. Um, So this is going to be repeating a little bit, and then I'm going to go into some other strategies that you may or may not heard of with how to use nutrition and hunger responses. So this is going to be repeating. Prioritize your protein at every meal because that's going to set the foundational component with stabilizing your insulin, your leptin and ghrelin. Okay. If you can be more aware, fiber-rich foods helps as well. It's going to help with the sensation of being full. So that response of hunger is going to take longer because it's going to take longer to break down. So anytime you can get a good amount of fiber, it's going to help really stabilize not only your insulin but your two hunger hormones as well. And then we just talked about this healthy fats. It's going to give you longer sensation of being full. So that's where it comes in. So you really want balanced meals, not necessarily quick carbs alone. If we can always stack the protein, and if you can sneak the carbs in with the protein's going to help stabilize insulin, so you don't spike as hard. And then we go into these lifestyle strategies, and I touched on a lot of these. So sleep 7 to 9 hours, ghrelin support, leptin, both are impacted with the sleep. Stress management, again, movement. So you take all these concepts and you put them together, and they can really give you the advantage of the nutritional craving response and help set you up to hit your nutritional goal, whatever that looks like for you. Is it a percentage of body fat goal? Is it getting a certain percentage of body fat? All these things that I'm talking about help give you that advantage to set your environment up for success. Eating behaviors, and this is where these are strategies and proven strategies. So slow down when you're eating. Um, Again, this is an area I've struggled with. I'm more aware, but I still sometimes you just do it um, you're not even really. It can happen when you're not aware, and this is what happens to me. I could be in a conversation eating, and before I know it, I look down, my whole plate's gone. I'm like, what happened? So slowing down, being more aware, chewing longer, drinking more fluids, water, whatever, in that meal and being more aware of how your body's responding is going to help with your hunger responses. And it's going to help with minimizing overeating. So if you can take some time, be aware, be present with the meal, chew, consume more water. Those are all going to help. So other things you want to do, stay hydrated. Thirst, again, you guys heard me say this, thirst often mimics hunger and it'll help stabilize your energy response. Plan meals. And again, if you use snacks, really to prevent reactive overeating, because what I see some people do is they will restrict their amount of time eating too long, and they just don't have the willpower to not overconsume it, because they'll start eating fast and thinking more like they're starving, and then they'll overeat or overconsume their calories. So if you're that's why I'm like, hey, go do fasting. A lot of there for a while, everybody's like, all I do is fasting. Well, that's good if you know how to use fasting and you're disciplined enough when you have all those hunger responses really heavy that your first meal is heavy in proteins and low in carbs. If you don't have the ability to do that, well, fasting may not work for you. Then you may overconsume. Can fasting be utilized as a tool? Of course, there's a lot of tools, but it really depends. It's not a magic bullet, um, like individuals was talking about. So, tips for managing hunger: don't fear it. It is normal, so it is okay to be hungry, and that's a big lesson a lot of people have to get used to. Um, I walk around most times post an hour or two from my meal, I feel like I could go eat. I just have gotten used to that feeling and kind of just set it off the side or ignore it. And then obviously I know what my next meal is, and I'm going to get all the nutrients and things I need at that next meal. So it's okay to have that hunger response. Now, this has happened a lot at night, and the best thing you can do is drink some water and go to bed. This is where people get in trouble. So if they're sitting down to watch TV or whatever, and it's post dinner, then they're like, "Oh, I'm hungry." Is it really hungry? That's okay. I mean, or are you bored? If you do have some hunger responses, drink some water, and if you can, go to bed. Because otherwise, what I've seen a lot of people do is they'll start consuming more calories when they really don't need them, and they'll be okay if they can just, go to bed. Uh, so use protein as an anchor, and then volume eating. So if you go low calories, high volume foods like veggies, more nutrient dense foods are going to help as well. So the quality and types of foods you consume, making sure they're nutrient dense and high in fiber, those are all going to be very, very good choices, and they'll just help compound of what you're trying to accomplish. Again, mindful eating. Am I truly hungry? You just got to be aware, 'cause sometimes we, again, don't give the body enough time to respond to the food we've already consumed. and grab an extra plate or two, and then we're over consuming, or an extra bite or two, I should say. So again, we want to try to be consistent as possible. Our bodies like consistency, and it's going to allow you to have more control. And the more control you have, the more confident you'll get, the better choices you're going to make. So it's going to help with regulating. And, if you can get close enough, and I always talk about 80%. If you can get up to 80%, you know, close enough to some of the parameters we set, it's going to be good enough. Um, so, and there's a couple other components I'll hit on here that are more of knowledge base and things that we see. So the role of adipose tissue or fat cells are not just storage. They act like hormone factories. So leptin production. So the more percentage of body fat we carry, that leptin production is going to be higher. So again, it's like, okay, we got to figure out how we can get our percentage of body fat down so that way we control. But when we go through that process, you're fighting these responses, that hunger response. So with excess fat, the brain may stop responding. You may still feel hungry despite high leptin. So it's always a double-edged sword if we're carrying too much adipose tissue. Well, you know you're in this program to get all the tools necessary to get to the percentage of body fat that's healthy for you, and or if there's other specifics you want to go after. But that's putting all these pieces together is going to give you the knowledge base and tools to get your percentage of body fat lower. But so there's a ton of inflammation links. Enlarged fat cells can release inflammatory signals that worsen hormone resistance, leptin, and insulin as well. So weight loss effect, fat cells shrink, leptin levels drop, hunger increases. So this is why dieting feels harder after your initial success. And again, you got to use some of these other tools, the protein, the fiber, the fat, to really stabilize some of these responses and control the hunger response. And it will take a little bit of time for you to get more accustomed to maybe having some of these hunger responses and how you can maneuver some of these hunger responses without overconsumption. So again, your body thinks it's starving, even though you still have plenty of stored fat. And trust me, you're not going to, do any necessary damage if you you don't consume more. Our body is just like it's just pinging you, saying, "Hey, eat, eat, eat." When in reality, we probably really shouldn't be. So again, how to improve fat cell health? We're giving you a lot of those tools, and we're talking about them right now. So we want to shrink fat cells. It's going to help improve leptin insulin response. Strength training. Again, I've worked with diabetics multiple over the years, and the interesting part when I tell them this, they don't believe me, but um, I said, hey, just by you resistance training, lifting weights on a consistent basis, your insulin response is going to get better. And sure enough, without them adjusting their diet very much, all of them did see better insulin responses because lean tissue allows you to help stabilize your insulin better. So anti-inflammatory foods, so the omega-3s, we want to do more omega-3s because omega-6s um, omega-6s are in a lot of processed foods, and they can cause the inflammation to go up. Interesting part is if you're consuming too many processed foods, too many omega-6s in processed foods, your ability to absorb omega-3s is less. So just being aware of how much processed food you're consuming and how much omega-3, because a lot of times we don't give enough omega-3 in our diet, so we use obviously some type of omega-3 supplementation, which I do. You want to make sure that you try to pull down your processed foods as much as possible. That way you get those omega-3s absorbed properly. That's just a note outside of kind of what we're talking about. But omega-3s are very good, salmon, walnut, flaxseed, colorful vegetables. And then what we want to try to do is avoid some of these yo-yo type things so that, those constant crash diets. and it can really impact your insulin response and some of the ghrelin and leptin responses if we go down those paths, we'll go to extremes, and it can do more damage than good long term. That's why we're trying to give you again all the pieces of the puzzle and all the tools to do it the right way for a lifetime. And then hunger hormones can be managed through nutrition, sleep, stress management, and movement. And that's what, obviously we try to give you all those components. Um, the fat cells aren't passive storage. They're active players in appetite regulation. So the goal is not to eliminate hunger, but to stabilize and regulate it. So that way you have 100% control. So it's working for you, not against you. So really think about it that way. Hunger is not necessarily a bad thing. It's really how you respond, how you control it. What are you doing to set yourself up for success with all these other components outside? Um, if you're able to, pull one or two of these concepts in, start utilizing them until they become part of what you do, and then, work on getting the next one, the next one, the next one. You don't want to throw all this at once. You want to choose one or two to start working at first, and once it becomes like brushing your teeth, then you move on to the next because you incorporate these concepts within your life and who you are now. Uh, because it's, when they say habit, well, habit is just a response of what you do. You can change your habits, but you have to be intentional on the process. Again, we were taught how to brush our teeth, parents say, hey, you gotta brush your teeth in the morning, brush your teeth at night. Same concept. Because now it's like, oh, I automatically brush my teeth because it's what I do. And I don't want to, show up with bad breath either. So, the closing message, it's part of us as humans, right? The hunger response. It's how we control it, how we work with it, how we can manipulate and set ourselves up for success and control it. Hunger is not a bad thing. Being a little bit hungry is okay. It's how we respond and how we control it and set ourselves up for success in our journey with our health and where we want to be with, our percentage of body fat and our um, um, overall health, really. So, with that said, I will stop the share. And if you guys have other questions, never hesitate. I know it's an interesting topic, but it's a topic from a science level. Understanding of how we respond with hunger is important because some of the concepts I just presented to you guys, if we start again, if we use some of those concepts, start implementing into your routine, you're going to have a lot more control of how the hunger is manipulated and how it responds. Again, each person's a little bit different from emotional component, um, and some people do have more emotional response to food than others, and we have to work through that. So, any questions on from anybody?
I got a question, Tony.
Hit me up.
All right, man. So, I've had, since I started this program, I've had some victories for sure with
Yeah,
food.
yeah, yeah,
And I've also had some where it's like my cravings have gotten the better of me.
yeah.
And I joked with my wife, I'm like, it doesn't count if I don't put it on the app. It's been like a running joke, right? And I'm not cheating it, by the way, but like it's been a joke where I've had. And like I had a lady, she brought in some cinnamon rolls today at work. So sweet of her to do, right? And it's just like rude to not try one. And so I just ate one and I'm
Yeah,
like, all
yeah,
right,
yeah,
one won't hurt me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm like, I got to come up with some type of like backup plan that when I notice that my willpower is getting weak,
yeah,
I snap into like a predisposed like process. Maybe I should have just ate the one and then grabbed like a hard boiled egg instead or
yeah,
something. But do you ever have those where, because you said that like sweets are your
yep,
kind of your weakness,
yep,
so you don't have them in your
yeah.
house, but like, what happens when the crumble cookie's been sitting in your refrigerator for 3 days, if that
I
even
get,
happens?
I
And
give it to, I give it to my neighbor.
my
No,
wife would
I
kill
mean,
me.
no, I mean, a little bit. So, the interesting part with that is that going to set you back? I mean, did you ruin your whole day?
No,
Okay,
no.
then, then we won. So what I've seen with people, hey, you're going to have opportunities like this present themselves. It's your choice on how you want to respond to it. You don't necessarily want to be rude. Can you eat half of it? If you have the discipline to do that, again, each person's different. And it's okay, to have it and appease and, you just don't want to go off the rails once you do it. That's where people get in trouble. They think, okay, man, I had a cinnamon roll, and then they go and justify over consuming other components or having two or three more. See, we can justify a lot of things. Just is it right or wrong? It may not be. Is it getting us to our goal? May not be.
I guess you're right on that. I should give myself a little more grace. I felt bad about it, but I'm like, man, I got to. Like she brought this in. It's so sweet of her to do. It's rude not to. That's kind of our society nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll give you a couple examples. I mean, there's a lot of environments that we've coached clients in that is really tough like that. It's kind of the crabs in the bucket situation, right? You can go at that head on or not. What I'm saying there is it's okay. And like I think I mentioned this to you, because I know you had that wedding and stuff like that. Sometimes it's okay to be transparent. Say, hey, I'm on a health journey. And here's what I'm doing. And you let them know. I appreciate you bringing that in. I would have a bite, but right now I'm so focused on where I'm going. I'm sure my staff would love to have that, and I'm gonna share it with them. So you can frame it in whatever format you want. Uh, it's there's different scenarios, different situations. Sometimes when you do that, uh, people around you will go, "Oh man, that's awesome. Good for you. Maybe I should be on a health journey too."
Yeah.
So it really depends. Now, did that hurt your you know your progress? The only way it's going to really hurt your progress is if you're way over consumed or way over calories today, and you can still make that up tomorrow, but you don't want to do that on a daily basis, right?
Okay. I
So
appreciate that.
no, so having some. The cool part is the closer you get to specific goals, the more flexible you can be. Now, if somebody's in a heavy fat loss phase, you just got to watch it because sometimes what it will do is it'll slow them down and then they'll feel defeated. And we don't want to have guilt. You shouldn't have guilt around those things. So again, each scenario is different.
Yeah.
You know,
I appreciate that, man, because you're right. Like a month ago, I would have had three of them, so I should just be happy that I just had one.
Hey, hey, that's a win itself, right? Being aware and understanding of, okay, I'm not the same person that would have three, but I could have one and I'll be okay and I'll keep moving forward and don't look at like it's you track everything you can because all it is feedback. And I'm not gonna, us as coaches, we're not here to judge. We're here to educate. We're here to give you the tools to be successful. Now, will we have to say some things that may be like, oh shit, yeah, that's our responsibility too. Um, so I don't see it as a necessary negative component. So it's feedback, but,
Cool.
but having one is not going to hurt you.
Okay. Well, it's about just like caving into that craving there. It's like, okay, I got to snap back into it. And I'm glad
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
weekend's over, ready to get back into
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I felt the same way. We just got back from a conference, and it was in the health and wellness area, so everybody there was really fit. And obviously, the gentleman running it is in the same space. So he was very cognitive of all the food. Because I've been to a lot of conferences where the food quality is poor. And he was very intentional of making sure that the food we had available was, more for fitness professionals and people who are health conscious, which I really, really appreciate. But even then, we were still outside the realm of what we're used to being in our own environment. And, today, like, because yesterday was still off for us, now I feel like I'm finally back into, a routine. And then obviously navigating some airports and stuff like that with food it can be a little bit more challenging because it's really how they prepare the food. Um, so I get it from that standpoint. You're going to be in situations where you do the best you can with what you have available.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So don't beat yourself up. And the other thing I would say is you don't have to look at it in a negative format either. It's just a choice. Hey, I can either choose to have that or I can just keep moving. Um, it's not going to, again, it goes back to where you're at in your journey right now on how much it's going to impact you. You have 100% control. Whether you think so or not. It's just a response.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. Anybody else? Nope, nope, yep, no takers. All right. Well, hopefully this is helpful. If you have other questions, other strategies, or other questions about strategies, never hesitate. Either, obviously reach out to myself or Aaron, and we will provide you all we can from that standpoint. So, I guess with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, and I'll kick this recording back out. I know I'll have a guys coaching call tomorrow, and then I think Aaron has hers on Thursday. So everyone go out and win the day.
Cool. Thanks, Tony.
All right. You guys take care.
Johnny.
Thanks.